All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Growth Podcast with myself, Benny Fowler, and my co-host, Ryan Harris, the legend, the Super Bowl champion, the author, and one of my very, very, very best friends in the entire world. Welcome back. Today's episode we're just covering everything, NFL, college, life, business. We're just going to riff and talk about things that are important to us. And I guess, are we going to start in the NFL in terms of, I think we're 12, 13 games in, depending on the teams that we're talking about. But let's just dive right in. I mean, where do we want to start? I think, do we want to start with Tom Brady's comments? Where do we start?
Go ahead. Yeah. Tell the people what Tom Brady said, and then let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think Tom, had a comment where he came out and said that the NFL it's just mediocre football.
Yeah.
It's mediocre football right now, and I didn't necessarily agree with his comments. I know that you might have agreed with his comments, but I think my take on it is that I think the NFL right now, if we're looking at the mediocrity of it, I think we should look actually at the coaching of it.
Yes.
Are these players actually being coached? Are they being taught the fundamentals? Because if the product is mediocre, to me, it comes down to the X's and O's and the coaching and the execution.
And we've already had 2 coaches fired during the season, right? Frank Reich shouldn't have been named a head coach anyways. And Josh McDaniels, everyone in the world knows how I feel about that coach, right? But you're absolutely right, because we know. I mean, the year we won the Super Bowl, we worked technique more than anything. Mm-hmm. What's your technique on this? I mean, tell the people, how precise was Peyton Manning telling you the technique on a route where he wanted you to be?
Yeah, if he says 12 yards, that's where you should be. And then just really the fundamentals of actually getting open. I think we drilled that a lot. I mean, we would have walkthrough, then we would have walkthrough before another walkthrough to really just go over those fine details. And I think the game is now catching up to the offense. I think the defensive schemes are catching up to that. I mean, you see guys like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. You see what the 49ers did. How do you combat that when you have a Chase Young who's a first-round pick, a Bosa who's a first-round pick, a Randy Gregory? You got 3 legendary, in terms of their technique, pass rushers who can get to the quarterback. It's going to be hard for an offensive line to block that. As an offensive lineman, how do you see that in terms of just the defense catching up with the offense?
I think the defensive players have gotten a lot better, right? You look at a player like Roquan Smith or an Aiden Hutchinson, defensive end for the Lions. Like, whoa, man. Yeah. He came in. And it's not like the NFL hasn't had great defensive ends in the past, right? Like, this is not a new issue. You're not getting new levels of greatness at the defensive end position. You got to use formation. You got to use motion. Benny Fowler, I know you want to catch touchdowns. You might have to come back on a wham block and hit the inside of this guy, and give him a different look. So that's going back to what you're saying, coaching. I mean, a lot of times players and people in the media, they say, well, what do you could do about this defensive end? Number 1, block them, right? Use the technique to block a great defensive end is the same technique to block an average one, right? Same in college as it is in the pros. Where's your head at, though? Do you know it's a 5-step drop? Do you know it's a 7-step drop? In the play action, where's the quarterback setting up? Right? Is the quarterback going to set up? Is it just a pump fake down to the back that's next to him? Is this an under center? We're selling the wide run, and then he's setting up behind the right tackle. I mean, these are things you have to know to be successful. And then you add in, okay, this player's good at that. We're going to try and motion him. We're going to use an outside chip. I mean, one of the things, one of my favorite coaches, Charlie Weiss, he would chip from the outside on the receiver moving outside in. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Where is that? Mm-hmm. It's not just the running back coming at you.
And I think just even hearing what you're saying in terms of just where the NFL is, in terms of where defenses are, in terms of where offenses are, I'm wondering about the communication just within the building.
Well, and to me, that's leadership, right? Like, I heard Tom Brady's comments, and I'm thinking there's a lack of leadership on many of these NFL teams. And it's not just, it's not just the captains. You got to have guys who, in every position group, not only have experience, but say, we're not going to do it this way. We're going to have a higher standard in practice. we're showing up to the meetings on time. We're showing up to the bus on time. Offensive line, the groups that I was on, we were always on the first bus to the stadium. Doesn't matter what you want to do.
Who's that, Clancy?
Yeah, but it wasn't just Clancy, and you know what? It gave us time to get in there, get situated. Linemen, we're bigger. We need the knees heated up, back heated up. But I want to double click, to use your phrase. I want to double click on what you said.
Before we jump there, I want to also just circle back to, you said communication. You talked about players taking ownership just now,
right?
Coaches taking ownership just now. When we look at the Buffalo Bills situation and all the coaches that have been fired there, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, and the reason why I said that I think their window is closing is because I don't actually know if Sean McDermott actually is the leader to take them to the next step, and I think that's why their window is closing, because every time there's a problem, he fires somebody when I don't think there's actually real ownership there in terms of, well, you are the head coach. You do have a say in who's being hired. You have a say in how things are being ran. Where is actually the communication aspect? I think there's a lot of miscommunication there in terms of his coaching staff.
And probably fear, right? I mean, of all the head coaches you had, what percentage of them were afraid all the time?
Head coaches that were afraid? There's a couple of them.
Yeah, and that's what I see. That's what I see with Sean McDermott. Now, look, he also had a role to play in letting Leslie Frazier go. You and I have been in the locker room. Leslie Frazier is one of the most respected NFL coaches.
1,000%.
Period. Right? We're in that locker room. They get rid of him, or Leslie Frazier steps away, depending on what story you want to hear.
Right.
That's a different locker room.
1,000%.
Not just a different defense. That's a different locker room. And he had a role to play in that as well. And that leadership, that communication. Did he tell the guys why he did it? Did he tell the guys what happened? Did Leslie Frazier get to talk to his defense and say, hey, this is why I'm leaving? And so to your point, absolutely that's an issue.
Yeah, I think that's just the lack of communication. I think there's just so much to be said about that. And when you see successful organizations, Phillies, still repeating their success.
Steelers.
Repeating their success. San Francisco, I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan might have the best GM head coach relationship in the league. I think Philly's right behind that, and you can see their success in terms of the players they draft, the scheme they run, and just the overall culture that they have. You can see the culture on the sideline. You can see the culture within the coaching staff, and you can see it within the players. I think just we have that experience and that outside look. It's no different in business, but you can see the dynamic between the people that are at the top, and then it just trickles down. And I think some of these teams that we're seeing, I think we even might be seeing it in Cincinnati, where what does their window look like now? Quarterback keeps getting injured, guys can't replace the offensive line, or is the offensive line, are you guys finding the right pieces? I mean,
are they getting taught the technique? It would shock you, bro. It was a couple years ago I looked. There was only 8 of the 32 teams whose offensive line coaches actually played.
8?
8. Now, could you imagine
playing football at all?
Playing offensive line, right? Playing offensive line. I don't give a damn if you played receiver or safety. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You don't know my problems.
Right.
Could you imagine if you had 22 coaches who coached, quarterbacks and never played the position?
Yeah, that's tough.
But this is what happens in multiple NFL teams. And then, what's happening with the offensive line? Well, it started with your hire. Right? You started with your hire.
Yeah.
And second of all, what technique is that coach teaching? You said something interesting to me. You said there's techniques to getting open. What are the 3 techniques to getting open as a wide receiver?
I think it really just depends on the leverage that you get, the concept that you're running, and then understanding the concept in terms of, are you the main target, or are you really here to get somebody else open first, and then you're the guy to get the ball. I think that's one of the things that I learned from playing with Payton to Eli to Drew, and even being around Tom Brady for that week. I think understanding actual concepts of how to get people open, I don't think a lot of people understand. So I think it really starts with the concept, coverage, then leverage.
What happens if you need to get somewhere and that defender's leverage? Like, you need to get inside from the slot. The defender has inside leverage. How do you get open?
I'm going to threaten him outside. I'm easily going to threaten him
outside.
What
does that mean, threaten him?
So if he is playing inside leverage on me, I am going to take a couple even hard steps to where he has no leverage, so he thinks he has to overcommit.
Ooh.
And then, get him to overcommit and then I know where I want to go. He doesn't know where I'm going. I think that's one of the things that, Payton would always say is that, like, hey, they don't know where you're going. And defensive back is probably one of the hardest positions to play, if not the hardest position right behind quarterback. But, yeah, I would always threaten them opposite, head fake, shoulder shake to the opposite way, and then try to get open.
What's the difference between a good shoulder fake and head fake and a bad one? Because I can see it, but I don't know the difference.
I would say it just depends on, guys who don't have a lot of movement, who are more stiff. You can see it 1,000%.
But do you have to turn your head and shoulders?
You got to sell it. I think a guy like Keenan Allen is great at it. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he can deceive and he just has so much misdirection within his game. He's really good at it. Devontae Adams, is the best at it.
And is it how much of it is using how you run to create your moves?
Yeah, it's definitely on your pace, and then I think it's definitely on your body movement and your understanding of your body. And I think body control and balance. I think you can never drop a ball or you can never not get open if you're balanced. I think, you look at Steph Curry playing the game of basketball. He's a very balanced shooter. Klay Thompson's a very balanced shooter. So I think when it comes to playing receiver, I think that's the way you get open.
What did you do to work on balance?
I had some really good trainers. Shout out to Mike G. Shout out to Seth, the foot doctor. Evan at Resilience Code. Obviously great trainers at the Broncos, Lauren Landau. I would say they always incorporated a lot of balance within the workout.
Yeah.
And we're not just, we're going to bench press. No, we're going to use these medicine balls.
1 foot.
Yeah, 1 foot.
But by the way, in the
closed.
NFL, 70% of the time, in football, you're on 1 foot 70% of the time.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. Everybody wants to train binary. Oh, we're going up and down. No. We don't play like that.
Functional training.
Yeah. I think college needs to adapt to that.
Yeah.
Adapt to the learning and understand what you just said. 70%, you played on 1 foot. So when it comes to getting open and when it comes to training balance, I had the right coaches and then I had the right quarterbacks, to be honest. I was just super lucky with my quarterbacks and who I got a chance to play with. Just incredible leaders. But I do agree. I don't agree necessarily with Tom in terms of, just circling back to that. I don't necessarily agree in terms of, I think the talent is there.
Yeah.
But I think the coaching and the teaching has to get better.
Yeah.
These are the best athletes in the world. Teach them how to play the game.
Yeah.
I don't think if you looked at my college film, you'd be like, no way that guy is going to play 8 years in the NFL. But you get to the Broncos and your first teacher is Adam Gase, who was the offense coordinator of the best offense of all time, Peyton Manning.
Coach Tyke, I just saw Coach Tyke on the sidelines again, still winning.
So you have great teachers like that. Then your talent actually gets a chance to show up. So I think the coaches need to show up.
Did it ever scare you how much better you got because of a technique that somebody taught you?
Yeah, it was crazy.
What was it and what was the technique?
I would say just the freedom that the NFL gives you to get open. In college, it's like, oh, hey, you got to break down 3-4 steps, and then you have to make this square cut. No, in the NFL, it's, hey, get to 12 yards, and you snap this thing off. The ball's going to be there.
Did you ever practice? And for those who don't know, snapping off means you make a sudden change in direction. Yeah. Makes my knees hurt thinking about it.
Mine too.
How did you practice snapping off routes?
I would just always, Emmanuel Sanders, shout out to Emmanuel Sanders. I think Emmanuel and Demaryius, the late, great Demaryius Thomas, would pull me after practice as a rookie and just help me work on the top of my routes. We would never run full routes. We would never go 15 yards and run a full route. We would just work on the last 5.
Woo!
Last 5, just walking through it, running through it, walking through it.
Here's a defender here. Here's a safety there.
And they taught me so quick.
Wow.
They taught me so quick. It's the power of mentorship. So shout out to Demaryius and Emmanuel in terms of what they would just show me after practice. And then you have guys like Wes Welker, who ends up becoming my coach my last year. I mean, one of the best route runners of all time, in terms of getting open. So I would lean on them and watch them. So you don't necessarily have that in college because everybody's at the same level and age, and they haven't, we're all going through the same thing.
All smelling your own ass, too. All smelling your own ass. If you ask any college football player right now, they'll tell you what round they're going to get drafted.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going first round.
Yeah.
They forget all the other colleges and all the film that's actually out there. But as we're talking about college, let's talk about Deion.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about Deion. What do you think about his first year? How do you feel about the first year? Tell me what you think.
Look, this is success. Does success always look pretty? No, they've won 4 games. That's a 300% increase over last year.
Yeah.
If you with Michael Best go in and say, guys, look, we got a plan to get you 300% increase in production. Are you excited? You're excited right now.
Hey, they're going to take it.
You're signing clients, right?
1,000%.
If in my speeches I say, look, what I'm going to talk about today gives you a 300% increase in production, I got all ears.
Right.
So did you want to go to the national championship after 1 year with a team that went 1-11? 1-11. Mm-hmm. There's some changes that have to be made, and it takes time.
Yep.
I also believe that team learned a lesson, right? They lost a couple of tough games, but scored, you score 40 points, score 37 points, whatever. A lot of talk early on. My watch, my car, my podcast. Listen, okay, that's not going to get it done. You're distracted. And I say that because I've been there myself. Mm-hmm. It is so easy to get distracted when you can have the things you want.
Yep.
And that's what happened to the CU Buffs. They got distracted. They did not have an offensive line coach who actually played at a high level, won at a high level. That's going to be a problem. You have Pat Shurmur call plays for you. That's a problem. Ask anyone in the NFL.
I played for Pat.
So you want to expand upon Pat's play calling abilities? You want to leave it there?
I'll leave it there only because he's a Michigan State Spartan.
Okay, lucky for him.
Yeah,
lucky for him.
He's a Spartan, but
this is not so everybody's learning, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, Deion has a few less toes than he did last year. I mean, this is a lot to deal with and still increase your wins.
Yeah.
What did you think about the CU Buffs?
I think you're spot on. I think they got off to a great start, and then they had the bullseye on their back. But this bullseye on your back isn't Jackson State now. No, you're in the Pac-12, and people don't like the flash. People don't like winners. People don't like
because they can't do it.
Exactly. People don't like swag. I mean, I even think about the CSU coach. I don't know his name, but even what he said about Deion, even though CU won that game,
that was wrong. Talking about his mother and all that, that's ridiculous.
It was wrong, but when I think about the swagger that Deion has, people want to beat them. It's like Golden State, or it's like LeBron, or playing against Tom Brady. People want to beat you just to say that they beat you.
Or Notre Dame, kind of like Notre Dame.
No.
No, you didn't get up over a little extra Sparty. It was the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, winning record against Notre Dame.
Oh.
So, but no, I totally agree with you. When you're playing a perennial powerhouse like a Notre Dame at Notre Dame, you want to win that game. And I think that's what you saw in Stanford.
Yeah.
CU's handily winning that game. Stanford's like, no. I'll make a comeback against Deion.
Well, in that game specifically, Stanford came back to win, and at the time, I don't know if Stanford had a win or had one win. They had few minimal wins. When did you learn to play for 4 quarters? Because that's something you have to learn, especially when you're talented. I think it's even harder when you're a talented team, right? Hey, we got a 20-point lead. We got a 14-point lead. When did you learn how to play for the full 4 quarters? And what we know, better be ready for overtime, too.
Yeah, I would say I learned to play a full 4 quarters, maybe my redshirt junior year at Michigan State. We were 7-6. It was my first year starting, and I struggled throughout that year. I wasn't well conditioned in terms of being a starting receiver to play 70 plays. And we lost the 6 games we lost by a combined 13 points.
Ooh.
We lost them all in the 4th quarter by 1 or 2 points. And you just didn't know how to finish. And then next year we 13-1, we win the Rose Bowl, and we win every Big Ten game by double digits.
Well, I want to pick up on that because you said finish. You didn't know how to finish. And I believe whether it's sports or business.
Yeah.
I tell my kids this. I told my son this morning. Finish that first and then go, right?
Yeah.
What is the difference when you learn how to finish?
I think it's the difference between being a champion and not. I think it's the difference between scaling the company and not. I think it's the difference between getting on stages and not. It's actually finishing and doing what you say you're going to do. I think it's a super hard thing. Sometimes I don't think people actually know what the goal is or how to get there. I understood, oh, yeah, you got to finish a game in my mind, but not from a conditioning level standpoint.
Ooh, yeah.
Are you actually conditioned?
Right.
Are you actually ready to win the game?
And to me in business, I see it, are you ready for the negotiation?
Yeah.
Right? Like so many times, and I'm sure you've seen it with businesses, companies, or even if it's a deal, are you ready for the deal to have something go, someone to throw something in last minute? Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes people react because they can. Oh, the defense, if it's football, the defense gave up a big drive. Okay, well, that's not, that's then in that moment, but like what happened before it?
Right.
Are you ready for that?
How long have they been on the field?
Oh, by the way, we saw a couple of years ago, I think Patrick Mahomes had 17 seconds, went down, kicked the field against the Buffalo Bills. I was calling the game.
Yep.
Like, they had that mindset of 17 seconds, we can move the ball.
Yeah.
So you said it was in your mind and the conditioning. Was there anything else tangible to you when you see finish? When you're like, oh, that's a great finish. What does that look like to you now in sports or business?
I mean, I think it looks different in so many different ways. If I'm thinking about sports and I'm thinking about finishing, I'm definitely thinking about, what something like that, Chiefs, Bills, or I even look at Josh Allen, or I don't even want to put it on Josh Allen. Just look at the Buffalo Bills in overtime games, the last 6 games, or overtime in fourth quarter, they're 0-6. Mm-hmm. That's just, you guys don't know how to finish games. You don't know how to take the next step. When I think about the Golden State Warriors before Steve Kerr got there, getting to it, and then now they know how to finish. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, they add players, and there's no substitute for experience. When I see it in business, for me, finishing projects, finishing, hey, these are the emails that you're going to send. Just finishing the small things, and people think it's got to come to this big huge thing, big huge project. No, it's the daily things that you have to finish. When did you learn how to finish? When did you learn how to win in the fourth?
I think I had to learn it to be honest, I had to learn it a few times. I had to learn it in college. We were playing against UCLA my senior year, and we were about to lose the game. I think we had like minute and a half, timeouts. All of a sudden, a little choice route from our receiver, Jeff Samardzija. Shout out to the legend, the baseball legend.
Yes, Chicago Cubs.
And so Jeff Samardzija makes a little wiggle, takes it to the house, we win the game. And then later I was with the Chiefs, and it was like 3rd and 11 in the third quarter. I'm like, oh, man, we ain't going to get this. It's 3rd and 11. All of a sudden, we make the pass set. Alex Smith converts 13 yards, first down. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, what was I wasting my time thinking? And then being in Kansas City, down 14 points in the fourth quarter, in the end zone with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, dude, we haven't scored, we haven't done this. We haven't scored 14 points in a quarter all game, right? And he gets in the way he got in the huddle and started yelling out, hey, if they do this, you're going to do that. If they do this, you're going to do that. We're going to run this like this concept, to your point.
Yeah.
He was drawing plays in the center. And I remember in that moment, I'm leaning in the huddle thinking, oh, my God, he believes we're going to win this game. Like, I better find a way before we get to the line of scrimmage. And sure enough, we did.
Yeah.
And one of the things to finishing for me that people miss all the time, it's going to change in the end. If I'm beating you and beating you and beating, you're going to move. Mm-hmm. You're not going to take – now, you might give up or you might try something different. And that's what I see in football all the time. You expect the first 2 quarters, first 3 quarters to happen the same way in the fourth quarter. Absolutely not.
No.
The best play callers save 5 to 7 plays for a final drive. Mm-hmm. The best defenses, they're going to say, okay, they got us with the seam. They got us with the seam. We're going to change that in the fourth quarter, right? We don't want to – the great defense will say, we're not going to change it now. Let's keep them believing, and we're going to get them in the fourth quarter.
Let's talk about the Broncos.
Talk about finishing.
Finishing starting 1-5.
Yes.
And I think you and I talked about this maybe during training camp. Sean Payton's teams always get off to a slow start, even when he had Drew. When I played there in 2020, I think I forgot if we started 1-2 or 0-2. I forgot what we started, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we start like this," because Sean has this huge menu of plays, and then he shrinks it down week by week by week in terms of what's good, and then he finds a sample size, and now this team really believes, and they are finishing games. Tell me what you think about the Broncos. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs?
They absolutely have a chance to win the playoffs. For me, with the Broncos, it comes to consistency. It also comes to recognizing the talent, and then lastly, development. As it comes to consistency, look, Sean Payton has been consistent. And then talking to people on the team and who play as well as those around it, he's been consistent in his messaging, which you and I know as players, that's big. Because if something goes wrong and you start flailing out, what are you teaching us to do? Right? And how much control do you really have? What are you really mad about? Have you acknowledged your role in this environment? So the consistent messaging to me tells me a lot about Sean Payton, that as a coach, he understands he needs to set the bar, and that includes everything he does. Second, identifying your talent. Look, Courtland Sutton's been phenomenal, and he wasn't the receiver he is now at the beginning of the year. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, those guys have been talented players, right? Jerry Jeudy's going to get you a couple nice catches. But can you go to the check down because you have a Samaje P. Ryan, you have Javonte Williams, you have a Jaleel McLaughlin. The screen game has been developing, right? So you're running the ball, and oh, by the way, Courtland Sutton, go catch it in the end zone. On his way right now to set a career record for touchdowns. So it's consistency, recognize the talent, and then letting the talent develop without yanking them out. How many times have you and I seen a coach like, "Coach, that guy's 2-3 reps away from getting it," and you just benched him? And
I've been there.
Coach Payton doesn't do that. The same guys who he said are the guys are still the guys. And we know as players how that feels and how that unlocks production. That's what you're seeing with the Broncos.
Yeah, I think the consistency, I think that is, if I had to say the word, consistency in how they're showing up and how he shows up. I think that's why he's one of my favorite coaches. Sean is not going to waver because of what the media says, or he's not going to waver just because they lost a game. Hey, these are the players we need on our team to win and to have a big game, and we will win the game. Here are the controllables. This is how we're going to win the game. And if we lose, it's because we don't do these things. And he's going to come in like that every single week, and he's going to put people in a position to win. I know a lot of people want to see Marvin Mims or they want to see different players. Sean has done his studying and knows what these players do well in business. Who are your key executives? What do they do well? And put them in a position to do that. Help them operate from a place of strength. I think we're seeing that in terms of Russell Wilson, Adam Trotman, Courtland Sutton. But then also they're playing complementary football. Let's go kick this field goal. Let's go kick this field goal and let's play defense, or let's punt this ball, let's pin them down there, playing complementary football. So I think that's just it's super positive to see, and it's really good for the city of Denver.
Well, we're excited because we know for those players what it feels like. Now, look, you can win 40-7, right? Like take the Dallas Cowboys right now, set an NFL record for 20-point wins. Do you think they forgot about getting their ass beat against 49ers? Like they did not.
No.
Right? So
definitely in the back of their mind.
And you can win big, but can you win a close game? And you said a name I want to talk about more. Russell Wilson has been huge for the Broncos. 70% completion percentage on this 5-game win streak that they're going into the Texans game with, right? But also, like you said, I think about against the Vikings, they had a turnover, a second consecutive turnover by their defense in the opening drive of the opponent, which is always great. And Russell Wilson's in the red zone, takes a sack. And I'm calling the game. People are booing. I'm like, hey, look, like, yes, you want a touchdown. No one's arguing that. And don't make a mistake here, because you can come away with 3 points and a kickoff, and an extra 1.5 to 3 minutes of your defense getting some rest. You and I knew in that Super Bowl 50 year, we won multiple games, gritting it out, gutting it out. Those to me are better than the big ones, because you now know you had the will, the focus, and the consistency to finish the game. And that's what these Broncos have done. The defense has been great, absolutely, and they still had to make the plays. So they make the turnovers, and the offense is not trying to win the game each and every turnover. That's how it works.
A couple of close wins definitely does something for your confidence. And I think it builds the momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, a couple blowout wins, and then you get hit in the face. It's like, are we really that good?
Mm-hmm.
The Broncos have beat some good teams.
Yes.
Vikings were rolling. Kansas City, they've beaten some really good teams.
Bills on the road. How cold is it in the Bills Stadium? Tell the people.
I've only played in Buffalo one time, and it was actually extremely hot.
No way. How?
It was extreme. It was second game of the season. So
lucky duck.
Yeah. It was. You played some cold games there?
What? There's been two places where I literally wanted to get on the bus. Buffalo, one of them. When you get off that bus sometime, and I played there, I think once like early December. Whew. I mean, that's where the cold. You have to understand that's an opponent, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately, our coach at the time said, "Look, guys, it's going to be cold. You're not listening to me. It's going to be cold." That can't be an excuse. And I always love that when leaders acknowledge the elephant in the room. Gary Kubiak was great with that.
Yep.
Mike Tomlin, great with that, right? Hey, this is going to happen. We know this going into it. It's going to be cold, right? The offense is going to make some plays. What are we going to do about it then? Here's how we're doing it. And so thankfully the coaches said, look, we're going to go in there. It's going to be cold. I didn't get the memo that I got Super Bowl 50 season, which is where the neoprene. Here's a little NFL secret for the people.
Yes.
The offensive lineman, sleeveless, which absolutely got to be sleeveless.
Yep.
We'll wear neoprene kind of cutoffs. You'll be sweating bullets, and it's -5.
Yeah.
Because
I learned that from DT. I think we were playing in Chicago the year we won it. The year we won it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, get some scuba gear."
Yeah.
Scuba gear. So for people who
For parents sitting in stands.
For those players who are getting ready to play in cold games, for those parents who are getting ready to sit in the stands at NFL games or college games, that whatever it may be, scuba gear.
Neoprene.
When you see some of these players out here looking super tough when it's super cold out, they got that scuba gear on.
They might even have the scuba pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could run in those. I did the double tights, but scuba gear. But man, this has been great just chopping it up in terms of all things football, but how it relates. The intersection between sports and business is why we started this podcast.
Yes.
And I think there's just so many parallels, and it's a pleasure to be doing this with you and just talking about that. But before we go, right now, I think we're week 12 or 13 in the NFL season. Give me your Super Bowl teams.
Ooh. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and the Chiefs are going to figure it out. The Chiefs are going to figure it out. The Eagles are playing really well, but I got the Chiefs and Niners again in the Super Bowl, as it was that 3 years ago? Yeah. We'll see if Kyle Shanahan can run the bleeping ball. How about you?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I am a big believer in the culture and defense and offense that Kyle Shanahan has put together, but can he get it done in the big game? I don't know. I would take Kansas City and the Niners. Patty Mahomes. I mean,
yeah. Benny, man, one thing I've been doing lately is following this practice of naming your gratitude for something every day. So I'll ask you, Benny, what are you grateful for today?
What am I grateful for today? I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue to tell stories on a platform like this. Very grateful for that. It's one of the things that I think when they tell you you're transitioning out of sports, hey, you're going into a new identity. It's like, no, you can carry that same identity with you. It just has to adapt into different things, and I want to be able to continue to talk and share football stories.
Yeah.
How about you?
For me today, I'm grateful for my means. And what I mean by that is not financial, but if there's something I want to do, I have the means mentally, physically to go and do that or to work towards that. And I'm grateful for that. I think that's something that I overlook a lot, is the ability to do things that I want to do, to the ability to be curious, to choose a book that I want to choose, and having the means, whether it's past experiences, now financial stability, but just I have the ability to do things that I want to do, and I'm grateful for that.
Love it, my friend. Everybody, this is another episode of the Gridiron and Growth Podcast. Please subscribe and share this with at least one friend who you think will find this conversation enlightening. So thank you for my co-host, Ryan Harris, and myself. We appreciate you.